The crowdfunded MMO Ashes of Creation has been canceled, and all employees of developer Intrepid Studios laid off over the weekend. Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to suggest a crowdfunded MMO may not have been long for this world in the first place.
Yeah, but it made it a long time. It survived almost a decade from the dream to the game actually somewhat releasing on Steam, but this is a tricky one because, a lot of people were calling this a scam right from the drop, but equal amounts believed in the dream, and the dream of a truly reactive world that lives and shapes by your actions. So let's dive into those stories, and if you haven't heard of Ashes of Creation, we'll give you a little brush up and get into the news.
So, Ashes of Creation, the most successful MMO Kickstarter ever, according to PC Gamer, collapsed over the weekend. The game raised $3.2 million from almost 20,000 backers about a decade ago on Kickstarter.
Yeah, the original game pitch raised some red flags with some, promising a world that, quote, lives and breathes and reacts to what the players do. Yeah, you're already shaking your head.
Nope.
You've probably heard that pitch in a number of games, and almost none of them have ever truly delivered on that, I think.
Lives and breathes, and also go get 12 gears. Go walk out and get to 12 oil, and then you do this thing. It's a fucking same old thing. Theoretically, I mean, whatever. But it could be fun. Theoretically, players would be able to found and cultivate cities together in what they called the rebirth of the MMORPG.
Yeah, they promised political systems and allegiances and interconnected economies, and it all sounds very wonderful when it's just a giant paragraph on a Kickstarter pitch. And like we said, despite launching into early access on Steam last December and posting a development update just last week, development on the game is now halted, and it seems like all developers have been laid off.
So the development update even announces an update stream for February 13th, implying that work was proceeding in good faith with no knowledge of these events before they happened.
That thing's so bad.
Yeah,
News of the layoffs broke out on the game's official Discord server on Saturday, January 31st. According with that, a LinkedIn post from Intrepid's former community lead, Margaret Cron, revealed that not only had she lost her job, but also that, quote, the amazing dev team was all laid off.
It's crazy. Intrepid Studios founder and former creative director, Stephen Sharif, shared a message on Discord acknowledging the situation and offering a fishy excuse.
Yeah, it sure makes him seem to be the hero in this situation, as he tells it. But just for the sake of our listeners, viewers, or whatever, we'll just read the whole message here.
Here's what Stephen posted. I can make a limited statement in my personal capacity and not on behalf of the company regarding the situation. Control of the company shifted away from me, and the board began directing actions that I could not ethically agree with or carry out. As a result, I chose to resign in protest rather than lend my name or authority to decisions I could not ethically support. Following my resignation, much of the senior leadership team resigned. Following those departures, the board made the decision to issue WARN Act notices and proceed with a mass layoff. I cannot responsibly speak to further details at this time due to ongoing legal and governance matters. What I can say is that the developers and staff acted in good faith and deserved better than the uncertainty they are now facing. I'm incredibly dismayed by this situation.
Oh, so yeah, a mythical board started telling him to do evil things. He said no and decided to leave on his principles. Thanks to his bold and courageous leadership, a bunch of the senior staff followed. That's at least his version of events. However, folks cried foul pretty quickly at Sharif's apparent scapegoating of his company's board of directors.
Many folks interpreted from Intrepid Studios' public paperwork filed in 2025 that Intrepid Studios' board only had two members, Sharif and his husband, John Moore.
Yeah, husband and CFO, which is kind of interesting. However, this gets into the weeds a little bit. A user by the name of Wooden Caterpillar 3, and you can always trust the third Wooden Caterpillar, they note on Reddit that additional board members are not required to be listed on that specific paperwork. Only the CEO, CFO, and secretary, and those three are listed. Stephen Sharif is the CEO and secretary. John Moore is the CFO, so they're listed. There's no legal requirement to list all the additional officers, only the chief executives.
So, what Lawrence is saying is it's possible that other investors did receive some controlling interest in the studio and the game in exchange for preferred stock, and we wouldn't know because they wouldn't be on that paperwork.
That's correct. Yeah, but even if that's the case, let's presume that that is the case, it's still a bit of a betrayal of another kind, given that this was not the situation that was promised. Sharif had long promised, in fact, that this exact thing would never happen because of the way that they were producing this game.
Ah, dang it. Almost disgruntled players uncovered a 5-year-old post from Sharif responding to a post that compared Ashes of Creation to our favorite here, Star Citizen.
In that post, Sharif said that, quote, "We aren't governed by greedy corporate overlords. I'm funding the project, so no investors or a board to answer to, no publishers to appease. We speak with, not to our community, and we actually listen to feedback and value/respect our players." Such beautiful, beautiful words.
I love words, Lawrence. I love them. Actions, not so much, but I love the words. Perhaps to Sharif's credit, in the same post, he directly warns folks against pre-ordering or funding the game at that point, as, quote, "There is nothing that benefits you by spending money on Ashes."
Yeah, he's always been pretty, from what I saw, diving back into 10 years of communications, Sharif has always been very blunt about there's no reason to put money behind this, and if you're worried about it, then you shouldn't. So take that for what it's worth.
All right. As we mentioned previously, Ashes of Creation did launch on Steam in early access in December of 2025, last month, or actually 2 months ago. The game wasn't doing terribly either. Despite a mixed Steam user review rating, it still attracted between 10,000 and 20,000 concurrent players on Steam in January 2026.
Yeah, not bad. Really not bad. But many see the game's early access release as a last-minute move to avoid refunding any of the game's 3.2 million Kickstarter funds. Luckily, when it comes to refunds, some users are reporting success in getting refunds just through Steam. For instance, Reddit user Gritnick reports getting a full refund despite playing for 30 hours in the early access. So that's great. And good on you, Steam. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if that's a Steam... I wonder if that's a Steam policy?
I think it's Steam making an exception. Yeah.
Ah, interesting. While the game cost $50 through Steam Early Access, the Kickstarter... I hate this stuff. The Kickstarter offered backer tiers at $2,500, $5,000, and even $10,000.
Gotta sting. That's gotta sting. Unsurprisingly, because of the amount of money that some people have put into this game, some are discussing forming a class action lawsuit. Though, unfortunately, the likelihood of such a lawsuit recouping money seems low if we go by precedent here.
Yeah, that's true. In 2022, U.S. District Court dismissed a class action complaint against Soulbound Studios LLC regarding the canceled MMO Chronicles of Illyria.
Yeah, and that suit plaintiff James Falls spent over $20,000 on virtual items and real estate in the MMO that was canceled in early 2020.
Oh, man. The court found that the game's announcements and marketing didn't, quote, have the capacity to deceive a substantial portion of the public. Ooh.
Which is an interesting bar, and I have to admit, given the people that in the very early days were calling this game a scam and it would never actually launch, given the prevalence of all that over the years, it would be difficult, I think, to make that case against Ashes of Creation that their marketing intentionally would deceive a majority of the public. I think even in gamer circles, people are getting pretty cynical and aware of these kinds of projects. But still, it's a tragedy. It seemed like a lot of people really believed in this game, and a handful of people were enjoying it. So we have one less game to look forward to and one less game to enjoy now. And a group of people that worked really hard and sunk a significant portions of their life into this project now have very little to show for it and are kicked back on the curb. So it's a tragedy.
This is very interesting. Now, I don't necessarily know if this is the same scenario as what happened to Subnautica 2 a few months ago, with the developers and the board sort of fighting over it. And we got a lot more news as time went on. More and more came out. And I'm wondering if that will happen with Ashes of Creation. I would love to find out reports from developers that worked there, maybe people that were a little closer to Steven Sharif, see if there's more to this story or if this is where it ends and, someone makes off with the money is basically what happens. Or, I mean, maybe they blew it all on development, which is fine, right? And then they made the game and then that was it. And they ran out of cash. Maybe it could have just been a mismanagement of business, which is very real and possible. But I'm looking forward to seeing if there are follow-up stories here in the next few days.
Yeah, given the audience's hunger for any kind of explanation as to what went wrong. I mean, typically in these situations, everybody wants to know what happened, right? Aside from video games just being phenomenally expensive and difficult to make, generally that's kind of it. But that's a pretty fuzzy explanation. Usually people want a villain and a series of events that's pretty easy to understand. I think we will get something. There's going to be a lot of prying and picking apart. People are already doing it. I kind of mentioned to Bruce, I think there might be a bit of a crossover between people who are attracted to games with very deep and complicated systems and their willingness to investigate what seems like a conspiracy to the ends of the earth. So people are already hunting around. They found their state of California public filing and determined a bit of maybe a conspiracy from that. So yes, there's a lot of hunger for explanation here. A lot of upset folks that just want to know why. But unfortunately, I think, Bruce, what you said is probably the most accurate. I think 3.2 million is a lot, but for an MMO in development over 10 years, it's not that much, paying for a full staff and things like that. Now, they did have monetization in the early access already, so they were trying to bring in money, but it really does seem like, yes, development went on too long, scope creep was too high. They launched a product to try to bring in money. It wasn't enough. Maybe Sharif did actually bring on board some investors along the way to try to keep the project going, but then those investors started demanding returns, and that's maybe where we hit Sharif's ethical problems about maybe over monetizing a game that's still in early access. And then it all went kaput. But hey, at least it had an early access. They actually made a thing and released it. So that kind of sets it apart, I think, from an outright scam. Something like, the day before.
That's true. That's a really good point. I was just going to say, too, positively, which I don't usually say, but positively for Star Citizen. Star Citizen's been around for, over 10 years now, like 12, 13 years. And we've been calling it, sometimes it's a scam, sometimes it's not. People have put thousands and thousands of dollars into Star Citizen. But it is a playable video game, sort of. So you can go and jump in the world and it still exists. So if you spent 10 grand on something in 2012, you could still use it now, which I appreciate. I think they are the outlier since they've raised $1 billion crowdfunding, but at least they haven't really mismanaged their business too much. And it's sort of a playable game.
Yeah. And similar to this game and many others, you have people along the way questioning where the developers are spending their time, developing new monetization items versus actually building out the game that was promised in the first place. Yeah, it's a tricky thing to operate a game that is an active marketplace and on sale, but also not feature complete. You're still beholden to a vision of the thing you haven't quite built yet.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know what? I do hope that all the developers that worked on Ashes creation land on their feet. They can at least use Ashes as something on their resume. And then this is the sort of stuff that I tell our audience to check in on here and there. I love to see where these people land, like Steven Sharif, if he's going to move on to another project or if he just, gets absorbed into a corporate AAA game studio. Who knows? Because I think then you sort of can figure out what their motivations were with Ashes. Or if they start up a whole new project and then they decide to crowdfund a whole new thing. That might be a little weirder to do right after Ashes explodes.
Yeah, it would be difficult, I think, to ask for people's faith after the way that this project went. Yeah, I agree. The next couple of weeks will be interesting, and hopefully we'll get some more follow-up information to determine what happened here, because it's just a shame.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for watching Inside Games. We actually do not have a board, and we actually report literally only to you, and YouTube a little bit too. We love it that way. YouTube, unfortunately, they control the distribution of our videos, but we really do love it that way because we've had our fill of the alternative.
Yeah, that means there's no one that can shut us down, again, apart from YouTube when they decide to suddenly bury all of our content. But hey, we've been doing Inside Games in this format for a little over 5 years now. It's getting a little nostalgic here, which actually makes this the longest running version of this show that we've ever been able to make. So that's pretty exciting. I haven't run the actual math on it, but I know that 5 years is longer than we ever had on it before. So it's funny how that works, right? The second we're not beholden to anyone but the audience, now we're able to make it as long as we want. So we've only been able to keep doing this because of your support. That's what I was getting to. So thank you for choosing to watch this video. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your civil and interesting comments. We like those the best. We do have some especially brave viewers that support us directly through our Patreon. So we'd like to shout out CZS93, Crippled Poet, Andreas Ricci, Brian Cosner, and Kyle Heaton for enabling our bravery and allowing us to stay honest and culpable only to you.